It was almost midnight when I heard the knock, frantic, uneven, like whoever was outside had run all the way here, the kind of sound that slices through sleep and lands deep in your chest. I opened the door and froze. It was my daughter, Emily. Her hair was tangled, her face streaked with tears, and her arms were covered in dark, fresh bruises. For a moment I couldn't even breathe. "Mom," she gasped, her voice trembling. "Please, don't let him find me." I pulled her inside before she finished the sentence, locking the door behind her. My hands were shaking as I led her to the couch, wrapped her in a blanket, and tried to steady my voice. "What happened?" I whispered. "Emily, who did this?" She pressed her palms against her face and sobbed. "It was Michael. He said I made him angry. He said I provoked him." I felt something inside me snap, a mix of fury and disbelief. "He hit you?" She didn't answer, just stared at the floor, her silence worse than any confirmation. I'd always known something was wrong. The way she'd withdrawn since marrying him, how her laughter had turned cautious, how she'd stopped visiting as often. But every time I asked, she'd smile and say, "I'm fine, Mom, really." Now I was looking at the truth, and it was bruised and trembling right in front of me. "Sweetheart, we're going to the police," I said firmly. "Right now." But she shook her head violently. "No, please, no. He said no one would believe me. He said I make things up when I get emotional." Her words made my blood run cold. Gaslighting, the kind that slowly eats away at someone until they doubt their own mind. I cupped her face in my hands. "Emily, I believe you. Do you hear me? I believe every word." She broke then, collapsing into my arms, crying until her body went limp with exhaustion. I stayed awake all night, holding her. Every time she stirred, I'd whisper, "You're safe now. He's not going to hurt you again." But in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't over. Men like Michael didn't let go easily, and as the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I made myself a silent promise. He might have broken her spirit, but I'd make sure he never touched her again, even if it meant going to war. By morning, I had made coffee strong enough to keep an army awake. Emily sat at the kitchen table in one of my old sweaters, staring into her mug as if she could disappear inside it. Her bruises looked worse in the daylight, a purple mark on her jaw, fingerprints on her arm. Every time I looked at them, my throat tightened. "I called in sick," I said. "We're going to the police. You don't have to face this alone." She shook her head. "He'll deny everything. He always does. Last time I had a mark, he told his friends I walked into a door. They believed him, Mom. Everyone does. He's so charming." Charming. That word made me sick. I'd seen Michael turn it on before. His slick smile, his warm handshake, the way he made everyone feel small without them even realizing it. Before I could argue, there was a knock on the door. 3 sharp, steady knocks. Emily's eyes widened in terror. "Mom," she whispered. "It's him." I felt my blood turn to ice. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was him, Michael, standing there in his immaculate shirt, holding flowers. His expression was calm, too calm. I cracked the door open but didn't remove the chain. "You need to leave, Michael." "Mrs. Hart," he said smoothly, as if this were a casual visit. "Emily left in the middle of the night. I was worried. She's been unwell lately. I think she had one of her episodes." My stomach churned. "Episodes?" He sighed, feigning patience. "She gets anxious, confused. Sometimes she thinks things happened that didn't. She needs help, not—" I slammed the door before he finished. He knocked again, louder this time. "Mrs. Hart, please. You're only making this worse for her." Emily was standing now, trembling. "He's lying, Mom. Don't let him in, please." I put my arm around her. "He's not coming near you again." After a few moments, the knocking stopped. Through the curtain, I watched him walk back to his car. Calm, composed, like a man who still believed he was in control. But as his taillights disappeared, I knew he wasn't done. Abusers rarely leave quietly. When I turned back to Emily, she was shaking. "He's going to ruin me," she whispered. "He'll make everyone think I'm crazy." I took her hands in mine and said the words I needed her to believe. "Then we'll fight with the truth. You have me, Emily, and and I'm not afraid of him. Even if that was a lie, even if my heart was pounding with fear, she needed to see strength in my eyes, because from that moment on I wasn't just her mother, I was her shield. I spent the next morning driving Emily to the police station. She was pale and quiet, her hands trembling in her lap the whole way there. I could feel her fear, thick in the air between us, the kind that comes from years of being told no one will believe you. When we stepped inside, I walked straight up to the desk. "We need to file a report," I said firmly. "My daughter's been assaulted by her husband." The officer glanced at Emily, then at me. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" he asked gently. Emily hesitated. "Yes, but it's not the first time." Her voice cracked on those words, and my heart splintered. We gave our statements. She described the yelling, the manipulation, the way he'd apologize with flowers, and guilt instead of change. When she lifted her sleeve to show them the bruises, I saw the young officer's jaw tighten, a flash of anger he tried to hide behind professionalism. They took photographs. They promised to send someone to talk to Michael. But as we left, Emily's shoulders slumped. "He's going to twist it all. You don't know how good he is at lying, Mom." I placed a hand on hers. "The truth will catch him. It always does." That afternoon, the doorbell rang again. I nearly didn't answer, until I saw the same officer from earlier standing there, hat in hand. "Mrs. Hart," he said quietly, "we spoke with your daughter's husband. He insists she's confused, that she's under stress and might be imagining some of what happened." I felt my stomach twist. "Imagining things?" I snapped. "You saw the bruises?" He nodded. "I did. But he claims she fell during an argument. We'll open a file, but without witnesses." I cut him off. "There is a witness." "Me." I saw the fear in her eyes. I saw the marks. The officer sighed, sympathy in his expression. "I understand, ma'am, but these cases, they're complicated. We'll keep an eye on it." When he left, Emily was standing behind me, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. "I told you," she whispered. "He's winning again." I pulled her into my arms. "Not this time." That night, after she'd fallen asleep on the couch, I went into the kitchen and stared out the window at the quiet street. I knew he'd be back, not to apologize, but to reclaim control. Men like Michael didn't walk away. They circled, waiting for fear to open the door again. So I made a plan. I started documenting everything. Photos, recordings, timestamps, even the messages he sent pretending to be calm and concerned. He wanted to rewrite her story, but I was going to write it down first, word for word, bruise by bruise, until the world finally believed her, because he might have broken her once. But this time, he'd have to go through me. For a few days it was quiet, too quiet. Emily started to eat again, sleep again, even laugh once or twice when we watched old movies. I let myself believe, for a moment, that maybe he'd finally let her go. Then on Thursday evening, my phone rang. The number was blocked. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me I already knew who it was. "Mrs. Hart," Michael's voice said smoothly. "I think we've had a misunderstanding." My grip tightened on the phone. "There's no misunderstanding, Michael. You put your hands on my daughter." He sighed as if I were a difficult client. "Emily's fragile, you know that. She's been confused. She tells stories when she's overwhelmed." My blood boiled. "Don't you dare paint her as unstable. You don't get to do that anymore." He laughed softly, that quiet, chilling kind of laugh that says I'm still in control. "You're making a mistake getting involved," he said. "I'm not the enemy here, but if you keep pushing, this will get worse for her. Judges don't look kindly on false accusations." I hung up before he could say more, my hands shaking so badly I could barely breathe. When I turned around, Emily was standing in the doorway, pale as a ghost. "It was him, wasn't it?" I nodded. "He's scared," I said, trying to sound calm. "That's why he's calling. He knows we're not backing down." She sank into a chair, her voice small. "Mom, he used to sound like that right before he'd lose his temper." I kneeled beside her. "You're safe here. You hear me? Safe." But that night, long after she'd gone to bed, I found myself double-checking every lock, every window. I sat by the living room light with a mug of coffee gone cold, waiting for something, a sound, a shadow, that didn't come. The next morning, a police cruiser pulled up outside. The same young officer stepped out holding a piece of paper. "We've received a counter-complaint," he said grimly. "Your daughter's husband claims you are harassing him. He says you've been calling, threatening, spreading lies." I felt my knees weaken. "He's turning it on us." The officer nodded. "It's common. But don't panic. Just keep everything documented. Dates, calls, messages, all of it. The truth has a way of catching up." After he left, I looked at Emily. She was trembling, her face pale with exhaustion. "I can't do this," she whispered. "He'll never stop." I took her hands and said, "Then we'll make him stop." That night, I called a lawyer, a woman who specialized in domestic abuse cases. Her voice was calm but sharp, the kind of voice that sounded like steel wrapped in silk. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "Get a restraining order, don't wait. These men depend on silence." When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not fear, not anger, power. He wanted us to cower, but we were going to stand up. And when his mask finally cracked, when the world saw the man behind the smile, I wanted to be there to watch it shatter. The morning we filed for the restraining order, the sky was gray, the kind of color that makes the world look like it's holding its breath. Emily wore long sleeves even though the bruises had faded, as if her body still remembered how it felt to hide. Our lawyer, Sandra Price, met us outside the courthouse. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed and calm, in a way that made me feel both grounded and small. She'd seen women like Emily before, women whose stories were doubted, twisted, buried beneath a man's perfect reputation. Inside the courthouse, the smell of old wood and floor polish mixed with nerves. Every echo of a footstep made Emily flinch. "He'll be here," she whispered. "He'll make a scene." I squeezed her hand. "Let him. We have the truth." But when Michael walked in, he didn't need to make a scene. He didn't have to. He was every bit the man the world believed him to be. Polished, confident, sympathetic. He carried a manila folder under his arm like a businessman closing a deal. His lawyer, younger, smoother, greeted him with a smile. And when his eyes met mine across the room, he smirked as if to say, "You can't touch me." I wanted to stand up and shout, "You already touched her, you broke her." But I stayed silent. Sandra had warned me. In rooms like this, emotion is a weapon they'll use against you. Let the facts speak. When the judge entered, everyone rose. My pulse thudded in my ears. Michael's lawyer went first, reading from a carefully crafted statement about how his client was deeply concerned for his wife's mental well-being. "She has a long history of emotional instability," he said. "Our client has only ever acted out of love and concern. These accusations are the product of stress, anxiety, and misinterpretation." Every word made my daughter smaller in her chair. I reached over and gripped her hand. She didn't look up. When it was Sandra's turn, she stood tall and deliberate. "Your Honor," she began, "the defense has painted a picture of a loving husband, but we have photographs, medical records, and messages that tell another story, one of control, fear, and violence." She held up a folder and opened it with a soft snap. Inside were the pictures, Emily's bruised arms, her swollen jaw, the texts where Michael apologized for losing his temper. A hush fell over the courtroom. Michael's smile faltered for the first time. His jaw tightened just slightly, but enough for me to see the mask crack. When it was Emily's turn to speak, her voice was barely above a whisper. She told them about the first time he raised his hand, how he'd cried afterward and bought her roses, how each apology became smaller, emptier, how she'd started believing him when he said no one would believe her. By the time she finished, even the court clerk looked shaken. The judge asked a few questions, flipping through the photos again, then finally looked up. "Given the evidence," he said, "I'm granting the temporary restraining order, effective immediately." I exhaled, a sound that was half sob, half relief. Michael stood, his expression unreadable. As he walked past us, he leaned just close enough to whisper, "You'll regret this." I turned toward him, my voice low but steady. "Not as much as you will." He walked out, and for the first time, Emily didn't shrink. She just watched him go. her eyes steady, unblinking, strong. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, a thin slice of gold cutting across the courthouse steps. Emily stood there for a long moment, breathing it in, her shoulders trembling but straight. "He can't come near me now," she said softly. "No," I said, wrapping my arm around her. "He can't touch you anymore." But as we walked towards the parking lot, I caught sight of a car parked across the street, a dark sedan with tinted windows. It pulled away slowly, almost deliberately, and I knew, deep in my gut, that this fight wasn't over. Michael might have lost in court, but men like him didn't surrender to paper. They surrendered to consequence, and I was ready to make sure he faced his. For weeks after the restraining order, life felt like holding our breath. Emily jumped at every car door, every footstep outside the window. We changed the locks, installed cameras, kept the lights on through the night. Fear has a way of settling in your bones. It doesn't disappear just because a judge says you're safe. Then one Tuesday morning, the phone rang. Sandra's number. "Mrs. Hart," she said, "you and your daughter did everything right. The police just arrested Michael Whitman this morning. Someone in his office came forward. Emails, photos, financial records. It's enough for a full investigation." For a second, I couldn't speak. My knees went weak, and I sat right there on the kitchen floor. Emily walked in, her hair still damp from the shower, and I handed her the phone. She listened, eyes wide, then covered her mouth with her hand. "He's going to jail," she whispered. "He's actually going." I nodded, tears spilling before I could stop them. "It's over, sweetheart." She sank into my arms and cried, deep, shaking sobs that sounded like years of fear leaving her body. When she finally lifted her head, she said something I'll never forget. "Mom, I thought I'd never feel clean again." "You're clean now," I told her. "You were always clean. He was the dirt." The months that followed were slow, like watching a garden grow back after a storm. She went to therapy twice a week. She started painting again, bright, messy colors that covered the walls of my spare room. Sometimes she laughed out loud, sudden and real, and every time she did, I felt like I was hearing her childhood again. The trial came and went. He pleaded guilty to assault and coercive control. The newspapers called it a shocking fall for a respected businessman. But to us, it wasn't a fall. It was gravity doing its job. On the day the sentence was read, Emily and I sat in the courtroom together. He looked smaller somehow, the shine gone from his face. When the judge asked if she wanted to speak, she stood, shoulders square, voice steady. "You tried to convince me I was crazy," she said. "You almost succeeded, but I found my way back because someone believed me. My mother did." When she sat down, she took my hand, and I realized I'd been crying quietly the whole time. Afterward, we stepped outside into the sunlight. It was bright, almost blinding. The courthouse steps were warm beneath our feet. Emily tilted her face to the sky, eyes closed, and smiled. "What now?" she asked. "Now we live," I said. "We don't hide anymore." That evening, we cooked dinner together. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread. The kitchen smelled like comfort and freedom. When she laughed, I looked at her and thought about the night she'd come to me bruised and terrified, the girl who thought no one would believe her. And now here she was, alive, whole, unafraid. Sometimes justice doesn't come with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it's just a mother and daughter sitting in a quiet kitchen, knowing they survived. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You did it." She smiled. "No, Mom, we did." Outside, the last of the evening light slid through the window. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch at the dark waiting beyond it, because this time, the light was ours, and it wasn't going anywhere.